In the quiet, tree-lined suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, the Clark family was living the American dream. Or at least, that's what their neighbors thought. Tom, a 44-year-old IT project manager, had a stable career. His wife, Sarah, 41, was a talented freelance graphic designer. Their son, 14-year-old Liam, was a smart kid who loved science, and their daughter, 10-year-old Maya, had an infectious laugh that could fill their entire 4-bedroom house. But for Tom and Sarah, the cul-de-sac felt less like a dream and more like a cage. The years were blurring into a routine of mortgage payments, PTA meetings, and spreadsheet deadlines. They craved something more. They craved freedom, adventure, and a world bigger than their manicured lawn. The dream took shape one evening over a bottle of wine, sparked by a documentary about a family sailing the globe. It started as a what if, and slowly, powerfully, became a when. For the next 2 years, that when became their entire focus. They sold the house, the 2 cars, the furniture, everything that tied them to their landlocked life. Their life savings, combined with the equity from their home, went into a single floating asset, a 2016 Giano Sun Odyssey 440. It was a beautiful, modern, and reliable vessel, perfect for a family. They named her Stargazer. Preparation was meticulous, almost obsessive. Tom, the project manager, created a master plan with hundreds of action items. They took advanced sailing courses, offshore safety certifications, and first aid training. They spent 6 months in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, outfitting Stargazer for a circumnavigation. They installed solar panels, a water maker, a new set of Dyneema running rigging, and the latest Raymarine navigation electronics. They hired a respected marine surveyor, a man with 30 years of experience, to conduct a full pre-purchase inspection. The surveyor's report came back glowing. Vessel is in excellent condition, well maintained, and ready for blue water passage. They read those words like a blessing. In June 2023, they cast off the lines. The first 6 months were a blissful whirlwind. They island-hopped through the Bahamas, mesmerized by the crystal-clear water. Liam learned celestial navigation, and Maya became an expert at identifying dolphins. They weathered their first squall off the coast of Puerto Rico, a 35-knot blow that tested their nerves but ultimately boosted their confidence. They weren't just playing sailors, they were doing it. They transited the Panama Canal in January, a rite of passage that felt like their official entry into the big leagues. The Pacific Ocean lay before them, a vast, blue expanse of promise. Their destination was the Galapagos Islands, a 900 nautical mile passage from Panama City. They provisioned for 20 days, filling every locker. Tom double-checked the engine, Sarah organized the medical kits, and the kids stowed their books and toys. Every system was checked. The sails, the engine, the bilge pumps, the navigation lights, everything seemed perfect. The oversight, the simple, fatal oversight, was a piece of equipment no one ever thinks about until it fails. It was a through-hull fitting, specifically the one for the starboard cockpit scupper drain. Made of Marelon, a type of reinforced polymer, it was the original fitting installed at the factory in 2016. For 8 years, it had sat just above the waterline, exposed to the relentless tropical sun during the day and salt water at night. UV radiation had made the plastic brittle, weak, and fragile. It was a ticking time bomb, hidden in plain sight and missed by everyone. The previous owner, the expert surveyor, and Tom himself during his countless inspections. The first 5 days of the passage to the Galapagos were idyllic. They had steady 15-knot winds on their beam, and Stargazer sailed comfortably at 7 knots. The nights were clear, and the family would lie on the deck, living up to their boat's name, mesmerized by the Milky Way. They were living their dream. On the 6th day, the weather changed. It wasn't a storm, not by a long shot. The forecast showed a passing trough, bringing choppy seas and winds gusting to 25 knots. It was uncomfortable, but nothing Stargazer couldn't handle. The waves grew to about 8 feet, steep and confused. The boat began to slam and shudder as it navigated the chop. Around 2 p.m., Liam and Maya were in the cockpit. secured by their tethers, playing a card game. Tom was at the helm, hand steering to ease the boat's motion through the waves. A larger rogue wave, steeper than the rest, crashed over the starboard side. It wasn't dangerous, but it was powerful, sending a torrent of green water into the cockpit, drenching the kids and flooding the space with hundreds of gallons of seawater in seconds. "Whoa! That was a big one!" Liam shouted, laughing as he shook the water from his hair. Maya squealed, half in surprise, half in delight. The cockpit was designed for this. Two large scupper drains, one on each side, were meant to evacuate the water in under a minute. As the water began to drain, Tom felt a subtle but violent shudder through the hull, followed by a sickening crack that sounded like a gunshot. It was immediately followed by a new, terrifying sound, not the gurgle of water draining out, but the high-pressure hiss of water spraying in. "Sarah!" Tom yelled, his voice tight with a sudden icy dread. "Something's wrong!" "Check the aft cabin now." Sarah, who had been preparing a snack below, scrambled toward the back of the boat. The hissing sound was loudest there. She threw open the door to the aft cabin and froze. A geyser of seawater was blasting horizontally from the side of the hull, just below the cockpit seat. The through-hull fitting had snapped clean off. The force of the water draining from the full cockpit had been the final straw for the brittle plastic. It hadn't just cracked, it had disintegrated. A perfect 2-inch hole was now channeling the full force of the Pacific Ocean directly into their boat. Panic gave way to training. "Tom, we're taking on water, fast!" Tom's mind raced. He engaged the autopilot and lunged for the emergency locker. He grabbed a tapered wooden plug, a standard piece of safety gear designed for exactly this situation. He shoved past Sarah and plunged his arm into the torrent of freezing water, trying to jam the plug into the hole, but the pressure was too intense. The water blasted the plug from his hand. "It's not working!" he yelled over the roar. Water was already ankle-deep on the cabin floor. The high-water alarm began to shriek, a deafening electronic scream that signaled the failure of their primary bilge pump to keep up. The second, high-capacity pump kicked in, but it was like using a teacup to empty a swimming pool. "The bucket brigade!" Sarah screamed, remembering their training. Liam, his face pale with fear, appeared at the companionway. "Liam, get buckets. Maya, stay in the main salon and hold on tight." For 20 minutes they fought a losing battle. Tom tried to fashion a makeshift patch using a cutting board and a cushion, but the water pressure was relentless. Sarah and Liam bailed furiously, but for every bucket they threw out, 2 more seemed to flood in. The water was rising, submerging the batteries. The lights flickered and died, plunging the cabin into a terrifying twilight. The shrieking alarm went silent as the electrical system shorted out. The boat was starting to feel heavy and sluggish. The gentle rocking motion had been replaced by a dead, wallowing feel. Tom looked at Sarah, his face a mask of desperation and defeat. They both knew it was over. "We have to go," he said, his voice cracking. "We're abandoning ship. This is not a drill." The next 10 minutes were a blur of controlled chaos. Sarah grabbed the ditch bag, a waterproof bag packed with their EPIRB, a satellite phone, passports, water and medical supplies. Tom deployed the life raft, a 6-person canister that hissed open into a bright orange haven on the churning sea. Getting the children from the sinking boat to the raft was the most terrifying moment of their lives. The gap between the two would open and close violently with each wave. Tom went first to secure it. Then, timing the waves, he yelled for Liam. The brave 14-year-old leapt across the chasm, landing safely. Sarah went next, holding a terrified Maya in her arms. "We're going to make a big jump, sweetie," she said, her voice shaking. Like a superhero, she leaped, landing hard in the raft, protecting Maya with her body. The family was together, but their home, their dream, and everything they owned was sinking behind them. They cut the painter line just as the stern of Stargazer dipped below the waves. The bow lifted toward the sky one last time, a final silent salute, before sliding beneath the surface, gone forever. Adrift in the vastness of the Pacific, the four of them huddled together inside the small covered raft. Sarah activated the EPIRB, sending a distress signal to a satellite network. Then they waited. For 31 hours, they drifted. They rationed their water, told stories to keep Maya's spirits up, and fought off the cold despair that threatened to consume them. On the second day, they heard it. The low, deep thrum of a large engine. A container ship, the MSC Isabella, had diverted its course in response to their EPIRB signal. The sight of its towering hull appearing over the horizon was the most beautiful thing they had ever seen. The rescue was professional and swift. Once aboard the massive ship, wrapped in warm blankets and drinking hot tea, the reality of what they had lost began to sink in. They had their lives, and for that they were eternally grateful. But their dream was at the bottom of the ocean. Weeks later, back on dry land and piecing their lives back together, the question haunted them: what went wrong? They had been so careful, so prepared. After speaking with marine safety experts and the boat manufacturer, the answer came back, devastatingly simple. It was the plastic through hull, a $30 part. An item not on any standard replace before circumnavigation checklist. It was an oversight born of ignorance, not negligence. They and their surveyor had checked the seacocks, the valves attached to the fittings, but no one had thought to physically inspect the integrity of the plastic fitting itself. A quick tap with a small hammer or a close visual inspection for UV crazing could have revealed the weakness. Replacing all the critical through hulls with high-quality bronze or new Marilon would have cost less than $1,000. The Clark family's story became a quiet, cautionary tale in the cruising community. A story not of a dramatic storm or a foolish mistake, but of a small, simple oversight. It was a terrifying reminder that in the unforgiving environment of the open ocean, the difference between the dream of a lifetime and a life-threatening disaster can be as small as a single, sun-brittled piece of plastic. They had sold everything to sail the world, only to have their dream sunk by a component they never knew they should have checked.